Craig Smith tells this story. The scene is a courtroom trial in South Africa. It is during the Truth and Reconciliation Commission's work after apartheid. And there's a very frail black woman in the courtroom. She's about 70. And facing her across the room are several white police officers who, number one, came into her home with her husband and son one night and shot her young son, killed him point blank. And then they came back later and took her husband. She did not see him for 2 years. They came and got her, and they took her down to the riverbank where her husband was, and they horribly and brutally killed him in front of her. As he was dying, he said, "Father, forgive them." And now she's in a courtroom, and these men have been tried and found guilty. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission asked her what she wanted out of all of this. How should justice be done to this man? And they named a Mr. Vanderbrock, who brutally has destroyed your family. And this is what this frail 70-year-old woman who saw her son executed and saw her husband executed said, "I want 3 things. I want to first be taken to the place where my husband's body was burned, to gather up dirt and ashes and give him a burial. And the second thing is, I want Mr. Vanderbrock to become my son. I want him to come to the ghetto where I live, to my house, twice a month, and spend a day with me so I can pour out on him whatever love I still have. And finally, she says, I would like Mr. Vanderbrock to know I offer him my forgiveness because Christ died to forgive." This was also the wish of my husband. So I would ask that someone would come over to me and come to my side and assist me into going over to Mr. Vanderbrock so that I can embrace him in my arms and let him know he is truly forgiven. As she started across the courtroom, Mr. Vanderbrock collapsed. He was so overwhelmed by this, he passed out. And as he's trying to come back into consciousness, the family, the friends, other victims who were in the courtroom began to softly sing, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." Jesus said, "You've heard it said, you must love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I say to you, love your enemies, pray for those who harass you, so that you will be acting as children of your Father who is in heaven." Now, in our toxic, venom-spewing, violent, nasty, profanitizing, conversation-filled, hurting and insulting, suing at a drop of a hat, I don't get mad, I just get even, do unto others before they do unto you culture, the words of Jesus seem ludicrous, unrealistic, crazy, and impossible. He is a dreamer. Stop hating those who hurt me? No way. Do good to those who harm me? Ain't going to happen. pray for those who hurt me, who I don't like? Have you lost your mind? No way. Wait a minute. I might pray for them. Yeah, I might pray something like Jared in The Long Road to Live sang about praying in their hit in 2009. I pray your brakes go out going down a hill. I pray your birthday comes and nobody calls. I pray you're flying high and the motor conks out. Yeah, I'll pray for you. Unreal. Jesus is a dreamer. In the movie Apollo 13, Gene Kranz, who's played by Ed Harris, says, failure is not an option. Forgiveness is not an option for disciples of Jesus. It is part and parcel of who we are as the disciples of Christ. And it's important to understand some things. Jesus is not making this stuff up. When he says, you have heard it said, but I tell you, he's doing, in a sense, fact-checking. He is doing what we should do when we get all these emails about all of these stories and sob stories, and Congress is taking away this, and they're giving that, and the president's doing this, and the governor's doing that, and the actress is doing that, and so forth, and we pass it along, and they fire up our emotions, and we find out they're lies. I remember when I first started out in the ministry back in the 70s, somebody came to me one day and gave me a petition about Madalyn Murray O'Hair, who was got a petition before the FCC to take prayer out of school. Anybody hear that? Remember that? Hey, yeah, great. Oh, this story's going to get better. You can love this. So I was kind of a skeptical person, so I called the FCC. All right? Now I'm down at Oriole, Maryland, in the middle of the country in Somerset County, and I'm calling the FCC. Talked to the lady, and she laughed. She says, you know what? There's no truth to that. We get tons of mail. It eats up our workers, our staff's time, but we get bags of petitions every day. It's not true. Well, I'll tell you what, about 2000, I had somebody come up to me just before church with the petition all upset, and the copy of it was sort of like you make an original copy of something, and then you make a copy, and it gets blurrier and blurrier and blurrier, and you could barely read it. And I said, what is this? And he said, well, she's trying to do this. And the interesting thing was, she disappeared in 1995, and they found her body in 2001. How could she be doing it? What Jesus is doing here is taking this, you have heard, but I'm telling you. How many of you have heard, God helps those who helps themselves? Who's heard that? Who has heard it's in the Bible? Anybody? Raise them up there. I heard that. It's not. Poor Richard's Almanac, Ben Franklin, late 1700s. He got it from a French guy prior to that. But I was told God helps those who help themselves, so you better study and pass that test. It's in the Bible. It's not. You've heard it said, but I say to you. And Jesus is not pulling this stuff out of his hat, because in the Old Testament, which was their Bible at that time, there is nowhere where it says, hate your enemy. As a matter of fact, there are at least two passages which give us a little clear insight on how God wants us to relate to the people we don't like, who harm us and so forth. The first is found in Exodus 24, verse 5. And it's a very little simple thing. If you see your enemy's donkey in the ditch, pull the donkey out, take the donkey home. If you see your enemy trying to get his donkey out of the ditch, stop and help him. You see, if you see your enemy's car in a snowbank and he's trying to push it out, go over and try to help him. In Psalm 34, we discover an interesting thing. The first part of the psalm, the first 13 verses, the psalmist is talking to God about his enemies. And he's praying Jared's prayer. God, get back, make them burn, make them suffer, blah, blah, blah. But something happens, and in 14 and 15 he says, when they were in trouble, I mourned for them, I grieved for them, I prayed for them, and when the prayer wasn't answered, I put on sackcloth and ashes. You see, when my neighbor down the street that nobody in the neighborhood likes because they are real curmudgeon, they're really mean and nasty and hateful and whatever, they have a death in the family, something goes wrong, Jesus is saying, God is saying, you be the first one on the doorstep with a casserole. Now, the word casserole is not in the Old Testament. But just substitute casserole for donkey and you see what it means. You see, Jesus just wasn't pulling this stuff out of the hat. He was getting the folks back to where God wanted them to be. You've heard it said. But let me tell you the way it really is. And the interesting thing about this passage, it just stirs up so many things. Good friend of mine, an elderly gentleman now, worked for a company 29 years, great salesman. And he was so good in that industry that there were customers who would come to the store, wait in line until he was available, and then go buy whatever they needed. And he knew all the weird parts that you don't really have on inventory, but people in that business used. And he could always find it. No matter how crazy the widget was, he had one under the counter. One Friday, and it was a small family business, and they'd known each other years and all this kind of stuff. One Friday, they come in and say, they're letting him go. 29 years. His pension would have been vested at 30 years. Now, the interesting thing about that was, Monday morning, after word got around that he'd been let go, he had 5 job offers. So his reputation, his work ethic, he had no problem. Sometime later, the owner of that business developed cancer, was dying. And my friend, who loved to fish, knew that he loved rockfish. And so every time he went fishing, caught a nice big rock, he'd take it to this guy. When the guy died, he went to the funeral. I know his wife would have picked out a real nice card. They probably sent flowers and took some food. Now, I got to tell you, when I heard that he'd been let off that Friday, I was mad as a hornet. That's why I spend a lot of my time asking God to forgive me, and I'm really sorry. So I asked him, I said, why do you do this? And he simply says, it's the right thing to do. I'm a Christian. I can't let the bitterness kill me, and I'm moving on. Hurts, scary at my age. I got to move on. Love your enemies and pray for those who bully and harass you. Now, the interesting thing about this passage that was read, Jesus starts worst case scenario, love your enemies. And he gets up to the sort of a least case. We all prefer as human beings, and that's normal and natural, to hang out with people we know and who are like us. That's why when we come to church, we usually sit in the same place every Sunday, around the same people every Sunday. And if we're a little bit late, or some visitor is a little bit early and doesn't know that it's our seat, and 51 Sundays out of the year, you're sitting on the side over here, and on the one Sunday you're over here, and your neck's looking the wrong way. It's just out of kilter. We go with a gathering of people, and we seek out those people who have something. We start asking, what do you do? Well, I'm a pastor. Oh, really? So am I. And I can forget everybody else. That doesn't work. Oh, really? Yeah. What kind of things? Well, I like to fish. Hey, you know what? I asked about 4 questions. Number 1, what lures do you use? What bait do you use? Where do you go? And will you take me? That's we tend to hang out with the people, and there's nothing bad about that. But it's sort of like, you go into the Walmart or Kmart, these big stores, and you can't find what you're looking for, and you're puzzled, you're looking up, you're standing in the middle of the aisle, people going around you, excuse me, and a salesperson sees it. Can I help you? Because most of them are trained. You see somebody looks lost, you go say, can I help you? Can I help you? It's a hospitality thing. We sit in church, somebody we don't know walk through the door, and we turn, hey, are they visitors? Do they go here? Why did he dress like that to come to church? Couple comes in, mom's got a little baby, dad's got the carrier, the Cadillac carrier, the second child, and they're standing in the doorway, and they got this look. Now, they're either looking for a place to sit, where the bathroom is, or where the nursery is, or what to do. I wonder who that is. Do we know them? Is that John or Mary's daughter? I don't know. But they sure look puzzled. And we sit. We don't do anything about it. We don't open up. When we were down at ASP, we stopped to get gas. And there was a lady at the pump in front of us who was using a squeegee on her windows. And I wanted to get the squeegee on ours because we had all kinds of crud on it. And I walked over to her when she was done. I said, "Ma'am, are you finished with that?" And she goes, "I sure am." She said, "Where y'all from?" I'm nowhere close to what she was, but, just work with me on this. "Where y'all from?" I said, "We're from Maryland. We're here for a week on a mission trip, Appalachian Service." "Oh, yes. I think that is so wonderful. I'm a member of Temple Baptist Church just yonder down the road here. I'd love to have you and your whole group come to church with me on Sunday. Would you please come to my church on Sunday?" And I said, "Well, I can't really do it because we're leaving Saturday, but thanks for the invitation. Now, hey, can I borrow your squeegee to, hey, you want to come to church?" Do you see where I'm going with this? Do you see where I'm going with this? You see where Jesus is going with this? To not just hang out with the folks who are just like us, but to open our hearts to people we don't know. So the next time that you're at a gas pump and you're talking to somebody asking for this, and they ask you for the squeegee, invite them to church. You see, Jesus goes to both extremes. And you know why he does this? It's not about the person we're forgiving. And it's not about the person we're loving. It doesn't depend on whether they love us back or they say, "Oh my gosh, I am so sorry that I've acted like a jerk towards you. Would you please forgive me? I want to be your bestest friend for the rest of my life." Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it doesn't. The issue is not them. The issue is us being perfect as God is perfect. And Jesus did not pull that one out of the hat either. Book of Leviticus, God tells Moses, "Tell the folks, be holy as I'm holy." 1 Peter 1:16, "Be holy as I'm holy." And it's not a sense of flawless and never making a mistake, and it's not becoming God, but it's a sense of being mature and becoming the finished product that God has intended us to be. That's what it's all about. We become the presence of God when we love. We become the presence of God when we hand somebody a squeegee and say, "By the way, do you go to church anywhere?" We go to the restaurant and we're talking to our server, our waitress, "Hey, you go to church anywhere?" You're in the grocery store and two carts crash, or you both go for the same box of cereal. And you start chatting a little bit, or you got your little kids with you, and so, "Oh, child, beautiful child, yeah, I've got grandkids, whatever." "Hey, do you go to church anywhere?" You sit in the doctor's office, and somebody's sitting there almost in tears, and, "Hey, you okay?" They might open up a little bit. "Can I say a prayer with you?" It won't kill you. It won't kill you. Say a little prayer if they want you to. You may just change somebody's life. It's about us becoming the people God wants us to be. It's not about their response. And Jesus gives you and me the freedom to be different. Because that's another way to understand discipleship. It's being different. Anybody can hate. Anybody can be angry. Anybody can ride down the road and ride by the worst person they hate in the world, broken down on the side of the road, and go, "Ha, ha, 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 suffer. I hope there's no cell towers where you are." Anybody do that. But God doesn't call us to be anybody. God calls us to be somebody, a disciple. And you and I have the freedom to be different. We are called to forgive because God's forgiven us. Would you pray with me? Father, thank you for your word that just enlivens our faith, that enables a 70-year-old woman to be able to forgive and to hug and just touch someone who destroyed her life, but to be able, by your presence in her life, her willingness to let you be there, to let this man know the love of Jesus. thank you for not only giving us a high standard and the freedom to be different, but thank you for giving us the power to do it. Amen.